you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. You even found things I didn't know. What is this Nixon tape business? We're going to find out about that. Yeah, I'm going to have to find out more about that. Now, I'm so glad to be at Hyde Park. It's my first visit to this place. And I know part of the Wallace family, and I think David Douglas is sitting right there, and they helped make this facility possible, which I think is marvelous, and I'm so glad to see that. And tomorrow I look forward to seeing the other parts of Hyde Park in the daylight hours. And my parents were cattle ranchers, as you've heard, and many of the cattle ranchers, at least in the Southwest, did not approve of Franklin Roosevelt's policies at all. Quite the contrary. And they didn't approve of Eleanor Roosevelt either. I'm not sure why, but they didn't. And when I was a child, we didn't have a school near the Lazy Bee Ranch, and I was sent off to El Paso, Texas, where I lived with a grandmother to go to school. And I went to this Miss Radford School for Girls. And the headmistress, Dr. Lucinda de Leftwich Templin, invited Eleanor Roosevelt to come to the school, and Eleanor Roosevelt accepted. And all of us were supposed to clean up and be out by the flagpole waiting for Eleanor Roosevelt to arrive. And I can remember to this day all of us being out there waiting, and here it came. I did not dare tell my parents. And of course I realized that I couldn't possibly like her. And so we all stood out by the flagpole, and the black car drove up, and she got out of the back, and she had an old black slouch hat thing on, and she had an ill-fitting dress that came down to her ankles, and kind of high shoes. And around her neck was a fox fur. I used to have one of my grandmothers where the fox mouth is biting the tail and it hangs out with the feet. Oh. And not a beautiful features in any event. And so she got out and walked amongst us and started to talk and to visit. And I realized this was a woman who had incredible charisma. Within 10 minutes, she had charmed all these ignorant little girls who were gathered around the flagpole, including this one. And I will never forget that day. She made such a wonderful impression. And I've met very few people in my life, a few, like Nelson Mandela and Eleanor Roosevelt, who immediately, on meeting them, you know they're special. And she was. So I never met the president, but I remember meeting her with much pleasure. And I don't know what a keynote speech is. I don't like the term. I never know what you're supposed to do with a keynote. So this isn't a keynote. This is just a few remarks on the topic of this conference, which I think is marvelous. And I'm so impressed that a number, if not all, the presidential libraries have cooperated to make this possible. You have marvelous speakers. You have a terrific topic. I adore presidential libraries. I've visited a lot of them, and it's so much fun to go. And this is a great idea, to gather together and really focus on one topic of great interest and have speakers as outstanding as those you've assembled for this. So I'm really glad to be part of it and to be here. And in thinking about what I might say, I thought about the issues and conflicts between the executive branch and the legislative branch, which we're seeing in our country right now to an extraordinary degree. We are in the most amazing time, and if I understand correctly, you might even be addressing some of this the next time the libraries get together. it is a remarkable time to be considering the issue of separation of powers and what it means in time of stress or war. And we have some very challenging cases at the Supreme Court and have had in the last few years, and there's some on the docket this term. And I couldn't help think of one particular historic figure of note, William Howard Taft. And the story's told that Mr. Taft once found himself stranded at a small country railroad station. I don't know if it was up here somewhere or where. And he was told that the express train would stop only for a large group of passengers. And Taft wired the conductor, "Stop at Hicksville, large party waiting to catch train." When the train stopped, Taft got on, and then he turned to the confused conductor. "You can go ahead now," he said. "I am the large party." And we laugh at this story because we remember that Mr. Taft, at his heaviest, tipped the scales at over 300 pounds. But as the 27th President of the United States and as the 10th Chief Justice of the United States, he also was the only person ever to have tipped the scales by holding both of those incredibly large offices. Experiencing firsthand the large responsibility of heading two of the most significant institutions in the free world. His time in these two roles put him on two different sides of the same constitutional coin. Indeed, our remarkable Constitution recognizes the individual largeness of these governmental bodies while acknowledging that their relative strengths will at times coexist, at times collide, and nearly always manage to carry out the will of the majority while safeguarding the rights of the minority. And so tonight I want to spend a few minutes to reflect on some moments in history in which these two large institutions, the chief executive and the Supreme Court, with large constitutional obligations, have intersected, overlapped, and even clashed. A look at the dynamic between the two tells volumes about the genius of our Constitution. To find an example of the judiciary and the presidency surviving the collision of two larger-than-life personalities, we don't have to travel very far into the early days of our republic. Distant cousins, John Marshall and Thomas Jefferson, were anything but the kissing kind. Indeed, their relationship was privately nasty and publicly only slightly better. Their exchanges, well documented but not well mannered, planted the seeds for an all-out war on the proper role of the judiciary vis-a-vis the other branches of government, and set the trajectory of constitutional law as we know it today.